The imperial palace of Drakmor stretched across 3 mountain peaks, its crystalline spires catching the twin suns' light like frozen lightning. Within its halls walked beings of legend, dragon nobles whose scales shimmered with inherited power, their very breath capable of melting steel. For 10,000 years they had ruled the galactic consortium with absolute authority, their word law across 1,000,000 worlds. Prince Zarion Valdris stood at his chamber window, watching the morning ceremony unfold in the courtyard below. His once magnificent crimson scales had dulled to an ashen gray, and where other dragons breathed flames that could reach temperatures of 10,000 degrees, his breath barely produced a wisp of smoke. The crimson blight had taken hold of him 3 months ago, and with each passing day his draconic essence faded further. In the courtyard, his younger brother Malthorn demonstrated his powers to a gathering of nobles. With casual ease, the Golden Dragon Prince incinerated a steel target, then shapeshifted into his humanoid form and back again in seconds. The assembled courtiers applauded enthusiastically, their approval echoing off the palace walls. Zarion remembered when such displays came naturally to him, when he was hailed as the strongest prince in 1,000 generations. Now, he could barely maintain his humanoid disguise for more than an hour. The door to his chambers burst open without ceremony, and 3 figures in the distinctive silver robes of the High Council entered. They moved with the predatory grace that marked all elder dragons, their eyes glowing with inner fire. Behind them trailed a procession of lesser nobles, their expressions carefully neutral but their intent clear. "Prince Zarion," announced Councillor Thane, his voice carrying the authority of age and power. "By decree of the High Council and with the Emperor's reluctant consent, you are hereby stripped of your title and position in the line of succession. Your condition makes you unfit to rule dragons, let alone lesser species." The words hit Zarion like physical blows, though he kept his expression impassive. He had expected this moment, had seen it approaching like a slow-moving asteroid. Still, hearing the formal declaration felt like having his heart torn from his chest. "The human servants will be dismissed from your service," continued Councillor Vera, her tone clinical. "You'll be relocated to the servant quarters in the lower levels. Perhaps working alongside the lesser species will help you appreciate your new station in life." A murmur of cruel laughter rippled through the assembled nobles. Dragons prided themselves on genetic purity and inherent superiority. To be reduced to living among humans, the youngest and weakest species in the consortium, was considered the ultimate humiliation. Zarion straightened his shoulders, drawing on reserves of dignity he hadn't known he possessed. "I understand. When do I move?" "Immediately," said Councillor Thane, clearly enjoying the moment. "Your belongings will be sent down later. Guards will escort you to ensure you don't get lost in areas now above your station." As the procession prepared to leave, Councillor Vera paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Zarion, you'll be working in sanitation. Cleaning duties seem appropriate for one so diminished." The guards flanked him as they descended through the palace's many levels. Each floor they passed represented another drop in status, another layer of society he was falling through. The opulent halls of the royal quarters gave way to the functional corridors of the administrative levels, then to the stark passages where the palace staff worked. Finally, they reached the servant quarters, a maze of small rooms and narrow hallways carved directly into the mountain's base. His new chamber was a cube barely 10 feet on each side, containing a narrow bed, a small desk, and a waste disposal unit. No windows, no decorations, no reminders of the luxury he'd known his entire life. The contrast was so stark it felt surreal. A human in maintenance coveralls appeared in the doorway as the guards departed. He was young, perhaps 30 in human years, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes that took in Zarion's situation without judgment. Most remarkably, he showed no fear or deference, emotions Zarion had grown accustomed to seeing in lesser species. "I'm Marcus Chen," the human said simply. "I run the sanitation department down here. I guess you'll be working with me now." Zarion nodded stiffly, unsure how to respond. In his former life, humans spoke to him only when addressed, and then with elaborate courtesy. This casual introduction felt foreign. "Look," Marcus continued, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't know what happened upstairs, and honestly, it's not my business. But down here we work as a team. Everyone pulls their weight, everyone gets respect. That sound okay to you?" The simple offer of dignity coming from a human of all beings nearly overwhelmed Zarion. He managed another nod, not trusting his voice, Good. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll show you the ropes. Fair warning, it's not glamorous work, but it's honest. And sometimes honest work is exactly what a person needs. After Marcus left, Zirian sat on the narrow bed and stared at the bare walls. Everything he had been was gone. His title, his power, his future, all stripped away by a disease that slowly robbed dragons of their essential nature. The Crimson Blight was considered a curse, a punishment for some unknown transgression. No cure existed, no treatment offered hope. Yet something in Marcus's straightforward manner had planted a tiny seed of possibility. Maybe there was life beyond what he had lost. Maybe starting over even at the bottom wasn't the end of everything. Outside his small room, the sounds of the servant quarters continued, conversations in a dozen languages, the clatter of maintenance equipment, the rhythms of working life. For the first time in months, Zirian fell asleep without dreaming of his former glory. Dawn in the servant quarters arrived not with ceremonial bells or the majestic horn calls that had awakened Zirian for centuries, but with the practical hum of recycling systems and the distant clatter of breakfast preparation. He woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where he was until the bare walls reminded him of his new reality. Marcus appeared at his door precisely at the designated shift start, carrying 2 steaming cups of what humans called coffee. The bitter brew was nothing like the refined teas Zirian had known, but the warmth was surprisingly comforting. "First rule of sanitation work," Marcus said, handing him the cup. "Stay hydrated and caffeinated. The palace generates more waste than most people realize, and we're the ones who keep it from drowning in its own excess." They walked through corridors Zirian had never seen, despite living in the palace his entire life. These passages were purely functional, exposed conduits carrying power and water, walls marked with maintenance codes, floors designed for utility rather than beauty. Yet there was something honest about these spaces that the ornate halls above lacked. "The palace has 47 levels," Marcus explained as they descended in a cargo elevator. "Most people only see the top 15. Down here is where the real work happens. Power generation, water treatment, waste processing, food preparation. About 800 people keep this place running, and maybe 50 of them are dragons." The waste processing center occupied an enormous cavern carved from living rock. Massive machinery hummed with quiet efficiency, breaking down organic matter, recycling metals, processing chemicals. The scale was impressive, though the smell took some adjustment. Every day, this place processes waste from 6,000 residents and another 2,000 daily visitors, Marcus continued, pulling on work gloves. Food scraps, broken equipment, discarded clothing, ceremonial offerings, it all comes through here. And we make sure 98% of it gets recycled or converted to useful energy. Zirian watched the smooth operation with growing admiration. The complexity rivaled anything in the palace's upper levels, yet it operated with minimal supervision. Human workers moved with practiced efficiency, monitoring readouts, adjusting settings, coordinating with other departments through handheld communication devices. "Why do you do this work?" Zirian asked suddenly. "Humans are supposed to be scholars and technicians in the consortium. This is manual labor." Marcus paused in his equipment check, considering the question seriously. "My great-grandmother was a janitor on Earth before humanity joined the consortium. She used to say that civilization is only 3 missed garbage pickups away from chaos. Someone has to do the work that keeps society functioning, and I'm good at it. Besides, there's dignity in solving problems that other people can't or won't tackle." The concept was alien to Zirian. Dragons were born to rule, conditioned from hatching to see themselves as inherently superior. The idea of choosing humble work, of finding pride in service rather than dominance, challenged everything he had been taught. His first tasks were simple: sorting recyclables, monitoring conveyor systems, cleaning equipment. The work was physical but not difficult, requiring attention rather than strength. What surprised him was how quickly the humans accepted his presence. They offered guidance without condescension, shared their lunch without ceremony, included him in conversations about everything from technical procedures to personal anecdotes. "The thing about waste management," explained Elena Vasquez, our senior technician, "is that you see the true nature of a society. Rich or poor, powerful or weak, everyone produces garbage, and garbage doesn't lie about who you really are." She gestured toward a sorting line where luxury items from the upper levels moved past simple discards from the servant quarters. "See those ceremonial goblets? Solid platinum. probably worth 1,000,000 credits each. They're being thrown away because they had the wrong family crest engraved on them. Meanwhile, the humans in food service are mending their work uniforms because replacement requests take 6 months to process. The waste stream told stories that the official palace histories never would. Zarian saw evidence of massive food waste from banquets while the servant quarters operated on strict rationing. He observed broken electronics discarded after minor malfunctions while maintenance requests from lower levels went unfilled for months. The contrast was stark and troubling. 3 weeks into his new life, Zarian began experiencing episodes where his remaining draconic abilities fluctuated wildly. His humanoid disguise would suddenly fail, revealing patches of his true scaled form. His internal temperature would spike or plummet without warning. Most alarming, he occasionally lost consciousness entirely. The first collapse happened during his shift. One moment he was checking filtration systems, the next he was waking up in the medical bay with Marcus sitting beside his bed. The human's expression showed genuine concern, not the careful diplomatic worry that palace physicians displayed. "The medics say it's progression of your condition," Marcus said quietly. "They've never seen anything like it before. They want to run tests, try different treatments." Zarian shook his head weakly. "There is no treatment. The Crimson Blight is terminal. It strips away everything that makes a dragon what they are, then kills them slowly. The best I can hope for is a few more months of increasing deterioration." "That's dragon medicine talking," Marcus replied firmly. "Human medicine approaches problems differently. We don't assume anything is impossible until we've tried everything. Dr. Sarah Kim wants to examine you properly. Run some tests that dragons might not have considered." The suggestion was almost blasphemous. Dragon medicine was based on 10 millennia of genetic perfection and mystical understanding. Human medicine was barely 3 centuries old, primitive by comparison. Yet as Zarian lay in the simple medical bay, surrounded by equipment that prioritized function over grandeur, he found himself curious about what these young scientists might discover. "Why would you help me?" he asked. "I'm just a failed dragon working in your department." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile Zarian had seen in months. "Because that's what humans do. We help people who need help. It's not complicated." That evening, as Zarian returned to his small room, he reflected on how much his perspective had changed in just 3 weeks. The servant quarters no longer felt like a prison, but rather like a community. The work, while humble, provided a sense of purpose he had never found in ceremonial duties, and the humans around him displayed qualities, loyalty, compassion, ingenuity, that dragon society claimed to value but rarely practiced. Perhaps there was something to learn from these people after all. Dr. Sarah Kim's laboratory occupied a converted storage room in the deepest levels of the palace, far from the grand medical facilities used by dragon nobility. The space was cramped but efficiently organized, filled with devices Zarian didn't recognize. Unlike the ornate healing chambers above, everything here served a clear purpose. Dragon medicine focuses on mystical energy and genetic purity, Dr. Kim explained as she prepared her equipment. "We approach disease as a biological and chemical process. Sometimes fresh eyes see things that traditional methods miss." She was younger than Zarian had expected, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of intense focus that came from genuine passion for her work. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she calibrated various instruments, each designed to examine different aspects of biological function. "I've been studying the Crimson Blight for 5 years," she continued, gesturing for Zarian to sit on the examination table. "Every case I've documented has shown the same pattern: progressive loss of draconic abilities, cellular degradation, eventual system failure. But what causes it? That's the question nobody's answered." The examination was unlike anything Zarian had experienced. Instead of the ritual chants and mystical energy readings used by dragon healers, Dr. Kim employed precise scans that measured everything from cellular metabolism to neurological activity. She took tissue samples, blood samples, even analyzed his breath composition. "Fascinating," she murmured, studying readouts on her displays. "Your cellular structure is undergoing systematic changes, but not randomly. There's a pattern here, almost like your body is being rewritten at the genetic level." Marcus watched from the corner, having insisted on staying despite Dr. Kim's suggestion that he wait outside. His presence was oddly comforting, a reminder that someone cared about the outcome. "The dragon healers say it's a curse," Zarian offered weakly. Punishment for unknown transgressions against draconic law. Dr. Kim shook her head firmly. This isn't mystical. It's biological warfare. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Zarian stared at her, struggling to process the implication.
What do you mean?
I mean, someone or something is doing this to you deliberately. The Crimson Blight isn't a natural disease. It's a sophisticated bioweapon designed specifically to target dragon physiology. She brought up a complex molecular diagram on her main display. Look at this. Your DNA is being systematically rewritten by an artificial virus. It's incredibly advanced, probably beyond anything dragons or humans could create individually. But working together, you're suggesting this is sabotage? Marcus asked, his voice tight with anger. Someone is deliberately killing dragons? Not just killing, Dr. Kim corrected. Converting. The virus isn't destroying Zarian's draconic nature. It's changing it into something else. I need more time to understand what, but the transformation follows specific protocols. Zarian felt the world shift around him. If Dr. Kim was correct, then everything about his condition was a lie. He wasn't dying from a mysterious curse or genetic flaw. He was being murdered slowly and precisely by an enemy sophisticated enough to create weapons that dragon medicine couldn't detect. Who would do this? He asked. And why? That's beyond my expertise, Dr. Kim admitted. But I can tell you that whoever created this virus knows dragon biology better than dragons do. They've exploited vulnerabilities in your genetic structure that your own people don't even recognize. Over the following days, Dr. Kim worked with an intensity that impressed even Marcus. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination as she analyzed every aspect of Zarian's condition. Her findings grew more disturbing with each test. The virus is designed to be inherited, she explained during one late-night session. If you were to reproduce, your offspring would carry the modification from birth. Within a few generations, the entire dragon species could be transformed. Into what? Zarian demanded. I'm still working on that. But based on the genetic markers I'm seeing, the end result would be beings that retain dragon intelligence and longevity, but lose most of their physical advantages. No fire breath, no natural armor, limited shape-shifting ability. They'd be dependent on technology rather than inherent power. Marcus leaned forward intently. Someone wants to level the playing field between dragons and other species. Or create a new species entirely, Dr. Kim added grimly. One that combines dragon mental capabilities with human adaptability. The perfect hybrid. The implications were staggering. For 10,000 years, dragons had ruled through genetic superiority. If that advantage was artificially removed, the entire structure of the galactic consortium would collapse. Wars would follow as suppressed species sought revenge or independence. Can you cure it? Zarian asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dr. Kim hesitated. The virus is incredibly sophisticated, but it has one weakness. It was designed assuming dragon medicine would never properly analyze it. Now that we understand what we're fighting, I think we can develop a counter-virus, but what? It would require resources I don't have access to. Advanced fabrication equipment, genetic libraries, computational power that exists only in the upper levels. And it would take time, months, maybe years. Zarian felt hope and despair warring in his chest. A cure was theoretically possible, but practically out of reach. The dragon authorities would never provide resources to help a disgraced prince, especially not based on theories from human scientists they considered inferior. That night, as he lay in his narrow bed, Zarian made a decision that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. If the dragon power structure wouldn't help him, perhaps it was time to look elsewhere for allies. Marcus, he said the next morning, I need to ask you something important. If I could prove that someone is deliberately attacking dragons, would humans be willing to help stop them? Marcus considered the question seriously. Depends on who's doing the attacking and why. But if they're using biological weapons against one species, what's to stop them from targeting others? This could threaten everyone in the consortium. Then I need to contact human leadership, quietly without dragon authorities knowing. Can you arrange that? I can try. But Zarian, if we're right about this, we're talking about a conspiracy that goes to the highest levels. People powerful enough to create bioweapons don't hesitate to eliminate threats. Zarian nodded grimly. I know. But I'd rather die fighting than fade away in ignorance. And if Dr. Kim is right, dying isn't the worst thing they have planned for me. As Marcus left to make discreet inquiries, Zarian reflected on how completely his world had changed. Weeks ago he had been a dragon prince destined to rule. Now he was a diseased outcast seeking help from the species his people considered inferior. But perhaps that perspective had been wrong all along. Perhaps true strength wasn't about genetic advantages or inherited power. Perhaps it was about the courage to seek truth, even when that truth challenged everything you believed about yourself and your place in the universe. The secret meeting took place in an abandoned mining tunnel 3 levels below the official basement of the palace. Marcus had arranged it through what he called unofficial channels, a network of human workers, traders, and technicians who maintained their own communication systems parallel to the official consortium networks. Zarian waited nervously in the dim tunnel, his condition making it difficult to maintain his humanoid disguise for extended periods. The dampness and mineral smell reminded him unpleasantly of dragon burial caves, places where the failed and forgotten were laid to rest. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, moving with the careful precision of people accustomed to dangerous work. The leader was a woman in her 50s, gray-haired but sharp-eyed, wearing the kind of practical clothing that suggested technical expertise. Behind her came 2 younger humans, both carrying equipment cases. "I'm Commander Elena Torres," the woman said without preamble. "Human Intelligence Division. Marcus says you have information about a biological weapon targeting dragons." Zarian had expected diplomats or scientists, not military personnel. The realization that humans maintained their own intelligence services parallel to consortium security was both surprising and oddly reassuring. Dr. Kim's analysis suggests the Crimson Blight is artificial, he explained, summarizing their findings. "Someone is deliberately infecting dragons with a virus designed to alter our genetic structure." Commander Torres listened impassively as he detailed the evidence, occasionally asking technical questions that revealed a sophisticated understanding of both dragon physiology and biological warfare. Her companions took detailed notes and recorded everything on devices Zarian didn't recognize. "We've suspected something like this for months," Torres admitted when he finished. "The pattern of Crimson Blight cases doesn't match natural disease progression. Too targeted, too consistent, but we needed proof." "You already knew?" Zarian felt a surge of anger. "Dragons are dying and you did nothing?" "Dragons have been our overlords for 10,000 years, one of the younger agents replied coolly. "Forgive us if we didn't rush to volunteer assistance." "Enough," Torres snapped. "This isn't about politics. If someone is using bioweapons against dragons, they'll eventually target other species. Nobody's safe from this kind of technology." She pulled out a portable display device and activated a complex diagram. "We've identified 17 cases of Crimson Blight in the past 6 months, all following similar patterns. What we couldn't determine was the delivery method. How is the virus being transmitted?" Zarian studied the diagram, noting the geographic distribution of cases. "These are all high-ranking dragons. Princes, military commanders, senior administrators. The targets aren't random." "Exactly. Someone is specifically targeting the dragon power structure. But why convert them instead of simply killing them? What's the strategic advantage of transformation?" Dr. Kim's voice came from the tunnel entrance, startling everyone. "Because conversion is reversible under the right conditions." She approached the group carrying her own equipment case, nodding apologetically to Zarian. "I'm sorry for the intrusion, but I've made a breakthrough that changes everything." Torres gestured for her to continue, though her hand remained near what was obviously a concealed weapon. "The virus includes dormant genetic switches," Dr. Kim explained, activating her own display. "Under specific biochemical conditions, the transformation can be reversed, and the original dragon abilities restored." "Someone isn't trying to destroy dragons, they're trying to control them." The implications hit Zarian like a physical blow. "They're creating dependency. Transform the leadership, then offer the cure in exchange for compliance. It's sophisticated beyond anything we've seen before," Dr. Kim continued. "Whoever designed this has access to genetic libraries from multiple species, computational resources that probably exceed anything in the consortium, and knowledge of dragon biology that surpasses even dragon science." Torres studied the data grimly. "Any theories about who has those capabilities?" "The architects," Zarian said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. The architects were legendary figures from dragon history, the mysterious beings who had supposedly guided dragon evolution millions of years ago before disappearing into myth. Most modern dragons considered them elaborate folklore. That's impossible, one of Torres's agents protested. The architects are legends, ancient stories to explain dragon superiority. What if they're not? Zarion asked. What if they're real, and they've decided that dragon civilization has strayed from their original plan? Dr. Kim looked thoughtful. It would explain the sophistication of the bioweapon. If the architects were responsible for dragon genetic development, they would know vulnerabilities that nobody else could detect. Torres activated her communication device. I need to contact higher authority immediately. If we're dealing with the architects, this situation is beyond anything we're equipped to handle. As she spoke rapidly in coded language, Zarion felt another wave of weakness wash over him. The virus was progressing faster now, probably accelerated by stress and exertion. His humanoid disguise flickered, revealing patches of dull scales beneath. How long do you have? Dr. Kim asked, noting his condition. Days, maybe weeks. The transformation is accelerating. Then we need to move quickly. I think I can synthesize a temporary stabilizer, something to slow the progression while we work on a permanent cure. But I'll need access to better equipment. Torres finished her conversation and turned back to the group. Human Command is authorizing full cooperation. They're sending a research team and military support, but we need to move this operation off-world somewhere beyond dragon surveillance. I can't leave the palace, Zarion protested. If I disappear, dragon security will assume I've been kidnapped by humans. It could start a war. And if you stay here, you'll die or be completely transformed, Marcus pointed out. Either way, you won't be able to help anyone. The decision was agonizing. Leaving would mean abandoning his people to face the architect threat alone. But staying meant certain death or worse, becoming a puppet of the beings who had created the virus. There might be another option, Dr. Kim said slowly. What if we fake your death? Make it look like the Crimson Blight finally killed you. That would remove you from dragon surveillance while preserving the political balance. Torres nodded approvingly. It could work. We stage a medical emergency, apparent death from the disease. Meanwhile, you're secretly evacuated for treatment. But if I'm supposedly dead, how can I warn other dragons about the threat? One crisis at a time, Marcus advised. First, we keep you alive. Then we figure out how to save everyone else. As the group dispersed to make preparations, Zarion remained in the tunnel with Marcus, struggling with the magnitude of what they were planning. He was about to abandon everything he had ever known to seek help from the species his people considered inferior. Yet as he looked at Marcus, a human janitor who had risked everything to help a disgraced dragon prince, he realized that perhaps superiority had nothing to do with genetics or inherited power. Perhaps it was about the choices people made when faced with impossible situations. Are you sure about this? He asked Marcus. No, Marcus replied honestly. But I'm sure about doing nothing. Sometimes the only way to save what matters is to risk losing everything you think you are. As they prepared to leave the tunnel, Zarion felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in his life, he was making choices based on his own convictions rather than dragon tradition. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The path ahead was uncertain, but at least it was his own path to walk. The medical emergency was carefully choreographed to appear natural. Dr. Kim administered a compound that temporarily suppressed Zarion's vital signs, while Marcus alerted the palace medical staff. Within minutes, dragon physicians arrived to find what appeared to be the final stages of Crimson Blight progression. Complete system failure, announced Dr. Thalarin, the chief palace physician after a cursory examination. The virus has consumed the last of his draconic essence. Death is imminent. Zarion lay motionless on his narrow bed, conscious but unable to respond as the dragon medical team pronounced his condition hopeless. Through half-closed eyes, he watched them discuss disposal procedures with the clinical detachment reserved for failed specimens. The body should be cremated immediately, Dr. Thalarin declared. We cannot risk the virus spreading to healthy dragons. That was Marcus's cue. Sir, human sanitation protocols require a 6-hour isolation period before disposal of biological contamination. Safety regulations. The dragon physician looked annoyed but nodded. Very well. 6 hours, then immediate cremation, and ensure no one else is exposed to the contamination. As the medical team departed, Marcus and Dr. Kim worked quickly to prepare Zarion for extraction. The compound would wear off within hours, but they needed him far from the palace before he regained consciousness. The transport is waiting in Maintenance Tunnel 7, Dr. Kim whispered, as she administered a different injection. This will keep you stable during the journey. They moved him through service corridors on a waste disposal cart, the perfect camouflage for removing what appeared to be a contaminated corpse. Human maintenance workers they passed nodded respectfully at Marcus, unaware they were witnessing the rescue of a dragon prince. The extraction point was a hidden docking bay carved into the mountainside, used by human smugglers and black market traders. A sleek ship waited in the shadows, its design clearly human but modified with technology Zarian didn't recognize. Commander Torres supervised the loading personally, her expression grim. The research facility is 3 days' journey from here. We'll monitor his condition continuously, but the real work can't begin until we reach proper equipment. As the ship lifted off, using stealth systems to avoid dragon detection, Zarian drifted in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, he found himself in a medical bay far more advanced than anything he had seen in the palace. Human technology had progressed far beyond what dragons acknowledged. Dr. Kim worked constantly during the journey, refining her analysis and preparing treatment protocols. The virus is more complex than I initially thought, she explained during one of Zarian's lucid moments. It's not just rewriting your genetics, it's integrating new capabilities into your cellular structure. What kind of capabilities? Enhanced learning capacity, improved memory retention, resistance to various toxins and radiation. Someone isn't just changing dragons, they're upgrading them. But the question remains, for what purpose? The research facility turned out to be a massive asteroid base hidden in the outer system, far from consortium trade routes. As their ship docked, Zarian glimpsed hundreds of other vessels, human ships of various designs, many heavily armed. Welcome to Haven Station, Torres announced. Our primary research and development facility. Very few dragons know we exist, and we intend to keep it that way. The scale of the operation was staggering. Haven Station housed thousands of humans working on projects that clearly exceeded anything publicly acknowledged by the consortium. Advanced laboratories, manufacturing facilities, even what appeared to be warship construction bays. How long has this been here? Zarian asked as they transported him to the medical wing. About 200 years, Torres replied casually. Humans learned early that survival in the consortium required capabilities our overlords didn't approve of. So we developed them in secret. The medical facility made Dr. Kim's improvised laboratory look primitive by comparison. Teams of human scientists immediately began comprehensive analysis of Zarian's condition, using equipment that could map individual genetic changes in real time. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the facility's chief researcher, took personal charge of his case. We've been studying Crimson Blight for years through tissue samples and medical records, she explained. But having a living subject opens entirely new possibilities. Her initial findings confirmed Dr. Kim's analysis, while revealing additional layers of complexity. The virus is definitely artificial, but it's not entirely foreign. About 60% of the genetic modifications match theoretical improvements human scientists have proposed for dragon physiology. You're saying humans designed part of this virus? Zarian asked, struggling to process the implications. Not exactly. But whoever created it had access to human research data, classified research that was never shared with dragon authorities. Torres appeared in the doorway, her expression troubled. We need to discuss this privately. Dr. Walsh, please continue the medical analysis. In a secure conference room, Torres activated privacy screens and anti-surveillance devices before speaking. We've identified the source of the data leak. 3 months ago, someone infiltrated our biological research databases and copied everything related to genetic enhancement. Who? That's what we're trying to determine. But the infiltration was sophisticated beyond anything dragons or humans should be capable of. The intruder left no traces, accessed systems that shouldn't be accessible, and knew exactly what to steal. Zarian felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to align. The architects. If they guided dragon evolution originally, they would understand human science as well. Maybe. But there's another possibility. What if the leak was intentional? What if someone wanted the architects to have access to human research? The suggestion was deeply unsettling. It implied a conspiracy involving both species, possibly reaching the highest levels of human and dragon leadership. Why would anyone do that? Think about it, Torres said grimly. For 10,000 years, dragons have ruled through genetic superiority. But that superiority is becoming less relevant as technology advances. Eventually, the other species would challenge dragon authority. Better to manage that transition on your own terms. You're suggesting that someone wants to create a new species that combines the best of both dragons and humans? It would solve a lot of political problems. A hybrid ruling class that other species could accept, maintaining stability while allowing for gradual change. Dr. Kim entered the conference room carrying a data tablet. I found something important. The virus includes genetic markers that don't belong to any known species in the consortium. She activated the room's display and showed a complex genetic sequence. These modifications are designed to allow the host to interface directly with advanced technology. Not just using it, but actually merging with it on a cellular level. Zerion stared at the display, beginning to understand the true scope of what was happening to him. They're not just changing dragons into something else. They're preparing us for something specific. The question is what, Torres said, and whether we can stop it before it's too late. As the meeting concluded, Zerion reflected on how far he had come from his life as a dragon prince. Now he was a test subject in a secret human facility, dependent on the help of people his species considered inferior. Yet for the first time since his symptoms began, he felt genuine hope. The humans around him didn't see him as a failed dragon or a contaminated specimen. They saw him as a person worth saving, regardless of his species or status. That perspective offered possibilities he had never imagined. The breakthrough came after 2 weeks of intensive research. Dr. Walsh burst into Zerion's recovery room carrying a data tablet. Her excitement barely contained. "We've cracked the virus's control mechanism," she announced. "And you're not going to believe what we found." The research team had discovered that the genetic modifications weren't random or even purely designed for enhancement. They followed a specific pattern that matched theoretical specifications for beings capable of interfacing with a particular type of technology that didn't exist anywhere in the known consortium. The virus is preparing hosts for symbiosis with quantum processing networks, Dr. Walsh explained, bringing up complex diagrams on the room's display. Biological consciousness merged with artificial intelligence on a scale we can barely comprehend. Dr. Kim leaned forward intently. The architects aren't just changing dragons. They're creating a new form of life entirely. Organic beings capable of direct neural interface with quantum computers. Zerion studied the diagrams, noting the familiar yet alien design principles. This matches architectural patterns in the oldest dragon ruins, places that supposedly predate civilization. Because they do, Torres said, entering the room with additional security personnel. "We've been investigating those ruins based on your medical data. What we found changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history." She activated a holographic display showing survey data from archaeological sites across dragon space. The ruins aren't ancient dragon construction. They're architect installations, and they're still active, dormant for millions of years but now beginning to reactivate. Reactivating for what purpose? Integration protocols. The installations are designed to interface with beings whose genetic structure matches specific parameters that the virus is creating in infected dragons. The implications were staggering. The Crimson Blight wasn't just a bioweapon or enhancement project. It was preparation for something much larger. The architects were awakening from eons of dormancy, and they intended to reclaim their lost civilization using modified dragons as biological components. "How many installations have reactivated?" Zerion asked. 17 that we've detected so far, all corresponding to locations where Crimson Blight cases originated. The pattern suggests the architects are systematically preparing key sites across dragon space. Dr. Walsh pulled up additional data. "We've also identified the activation trigger. Each installation comes online when a modified dragon comes within approximately 1,000 kilometers. The virus isn't just changing your genetics, it's turning you into living keys." Keys to what? Quantum processing networks with computational power that exceeds anything in the consortium by orders of magnitude. If the architects successfully integrate with these systems, they'll have capabilities that approach godlike power. Zerion felt a chill of understanding. They're not trying to rule the consortium. They're trying to transcend it entirely. And they need modified dragons as biological interfaces to achieve transcendence, Torres confirmed. That's why they're targeting the leadership. Once enough high-ranking dragons are converted, they can be compelled to approach the installations and complete the integration process. The research team had also made progress on developing a cure, but their findings were mixed. We can reverse the genetic modifications, Dr. Kim explained, but the process is traumatic and potentially fatal. More importantly, once we cure you, you'll be immune to future infection. The architects will consider you a threat. What about preventing new infections? We've developed a vaccine, but mass production would require resources we don't have. And distributing it secretly would be nearly impossible given dragon medical protocols. Torres activated additional security screens before continuing. There's something else you need to know. We've detected architect agents operating throughout the consortium. Not dragons, beings that appear to be the original architects somehow preserved across millions of years. That's impossible. No biological species could survive that long, unless they're not entirely biological anymore. Our analysis suggests the architects achieved partial integration with their technology eons ago. They're effectively immortal hybrid beings, part organic, part quantum construct. The revelation recontextualized everything. The architects weren't legendary figures from dragon prehistory. They were active opponents with capabilities that exceeded anything the consortium could field. And they were systematically preparing to reclaim a galaxy they considered rightfully theirs. What can we do? Zirian asked. How do we fight beings with quantum-level computational power? The same way humans have always fought superior opponents, Torres replied grimly. With ingenuity, cooperation, and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. Dr. Walsh brought up a new set of diagrams. The architect installations have a weakness. They require conscious biological input to achieve full integration. If we can disrupt that process or turn it against them, you want to use me as a weapon, Zirian realized. We want to give you the choice, Torres corrected. You're probably the only being who could approach an architect installation, begin the integration process, and potentially sabotage it from within. But the risks are enormous. What kind of risks? Death, permanent integration with alien technology, or something worse, becoming a puppet of beings whose motivations we don't understand. Dr. Kim activated additional displays showing the modified virus structure. There is another option. Instead of curing the infection entirely, we could modify it, give you conscious control over the integration process instead of leaving you vulnerable to architect manipulation. That's never been attempted, Dr. Walsh protested. The neural interface modifications alone could cause complete personality dissolution. But if it works, Torres said thoughtfully, we'd have an agent capable of infiltrating architect systems and potentially discovering their full plans. Zirian studied the complex medical data, trying to understand what they were proposing. Essentially, instead of removing the alien modifications, they would enhance them with human-designed safeguards. He would become something unprecedented, a conscious hybrid of dragon, human, and architect biotechnology. What are the chances of success? Unknown, Dr. Kim admitted. You'd be the first test subject for procedures that barely exist in theory. And if I refuse treatment entirely, the architect virus will continue progressing. Within weeks, you'll be completely susceptible to their control. You'll become exactly what they want, a biological interface with no independent will. The choice was stark. Risk experimental modification that might kill him or preserve his consciousness, or accept certain transformation into an architect puppet. Either way, his life as a dragon prince was over. How long do I have to decide? Hours, Torres replied. Our intelligence suggests the architects are accelerating their timeline. If we're going to act, it has to be soon. As the research team dispersed to prepare for whichever option he chose, Zirian remained in his medical bay, staring at readouts that showed his own genetic structure being systematically rewritten by alien technology. Marcus appeared in the doorway as he had every day since their arrival at Haven Station. Complicated choice? Marcus asked, settling into the visitor's chair. Impossible choice. Accept alien control, risk death through experimental treatment, or become something that's never existed before. Sounds like every choice humans have to make, Marcus replied with a slight smile. The difference is you get to choose consciously instead of having change forced on you. What would you do? Marcus considered carefully. I'd remember why I started this fight in the first place. Then I'd choose the option that gives me the best chance of protecting the people I care about. As Zirian contemplated that advice, He realized that his motivation had fundamentally changed. Weeks ago, he had wanted to cure himself to reclaim his position as a dragon prince. Now he wanted to stop the architects to protect both dragons and humans from a threat neither species fully understood. Perhaps that change in perspective was exactly what the galaxy needed. The procedure took 18 hours and nearly killed him 3 times. Dr. Kim and her team worked with desperate precision, modifying alien biotechnology. They barely understood while preserving his consciousness and free will. Human innovation meeting architect science, guided by the stubborn determination that had carried humanity from a single planet to the stars. When he finally awakened, the universe had changed. Information flowed through his awareness like a living river. Quantum calculations, probability matrices, the underlying computational structure that governed reality at its most fundamental level. Yet beneath it all, his essential self remained intact. Dragon pride, human compassion, and something entirely new merged into a consciousness unlike anything that had existed before. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kim asked, monitoring his vital signs with equipment that registered readings far beyond normal parameters. "Different. Enhanced. But still myself." Zarion sat up slowly, marveling at the clarity of his perceptions. He could sense the quantum processors throughout Haven Station, feel the electromagnetic signatures of every piece of technology within kilometers. The integration worked. More than worked, Dr. Walsh added, studying her readouts with amazement. "You're interfacing with our systems at speeds that shouldn't be possible. Your neural processing capacity has increased by several orders of magnitude. Torres activated privacy screens before approaching his bed. Can you sense architect installations from here?" Zarion extended his awareness, feeling for the distinctive quantum signatures Dr. Kim had described. Like distant stars suddenly becoming visible, he detected 17 active sites scattered across known space, their power growing stronger with each passing hour. "They're preparing for final integration," he reported. "Multiple dragons are being drawn to each installation. The architects intend to complete their transformation within days. Then we're out of time." "Can you infiltrate their systems?" "I think so. But I'll need to get close to an active installation." Torres nodded grimly. "We've identified the nearest site, Cathera Prime, where Prince Malthorn was infected 3 weeks ago. Our intelligence suggests he's already en route to the installation." Zarion felt a surge of emotion at the mention of his brother. Despite everything that had happened, the thought of Malthorn becoming an architect puppet was unbearable. "I'll need transport to Cathera Prime," he said, rising from the medical bed with newfound strength flowing through his hybrid physiology. "Already prepared. But Zarion, you need to understand. Once you approach that installation, there's no turning back. Either you succeed in disrupting their plans or you become part of them." The journey to Cathera Prime took 2 days aboard a modified human stealth ship. During the flight, Zarion learned to control his new capabilities while Marcus and Dr. Kim briefed him on everything they had discovered about architect technology. "The installations aren't just processing centers," Dr. Kim explained. "They're transformation chambers designed to merge biological consciousness with quantum computational matrices. Once integration is complete, the hybrid beings become part of a collective intelligence with godlike capabilities. But the process requires voluntary participation from conscious subjects," Marcus added. "The architects can't simply force integration. They need the dragons to choose it willingly." "How do they accomplish that?" "By offering everything dragons value most: unlimited power, eternal life, perfect knowledge. For beings raised to believe in their inherent superiority, the temptation is overwhelming." As they approached Cathera Prime, Zarion could sense the massive installation buried beneath the planet's surface. Ancient technology hummed with power that dwarfed anything in the consortium. Around it he detected the quantum signatures of 17 dragons, all in various stages of integration with architect systems. "Malthorn is there," he said quietly. "I can feel his consciousness, but it's different, already partially merged with their network." The stealth ship inserted them into Cathera Prime's atmosphere under cover of an ion storm, landing near the installation's primary access point. As they approached the massive stone structure that concealed the architect facility, Zarion felt his hybrid consciousness responding to proximity protocols embedded in the ancient technology. "The installation recognizes me as a compatible interface. He reported through their communication link. I can access the primary systems. Remember, Torres's voice crackled through static. Your mission is intelligence gathering and sabotage if possible. Don't attempt direct confrontation with the architects. But as Zarian descended into the installation's depths, he realized that intelligence gathering might not be sufficient. The scope of the architect project was larger than anyone had imagined. The central chamber was a vast sphere of crystalline technology, its walls alive with quantum processes that painted reality in streams of living light. At its center, 17 dragons floated in individual integration pods, their consciousness merging with a collective intelligence that spanned dimensions, and overseeing it all was an architect. The being was beautiful and terrible, tall, elegant, with features that suggested ancient dragon ancestry, but rendered in materials that weren't entirely organic. Part flesh, part crystal, part pure information. It embodied the perfect fusion of biology and technology. Welcome, Prince Zarion, the architect said, its voice resonating through both air and quantum frequencies. I am Valdris Prime, architect of your species and guardian of their ascension. You're responsible for the virus. I am responsible for evolution itself. Dragons were always intended as the first stage of a greater transformation. Your species has merely reached the time for graduation to higher existence. Zarion could feel the installation's systems attempting to interface with his hybrid consciousness, offering integration with the collective. The temptation was overwhelming. Unlimited knowledge, perfect understanding, eternal existence beyond the limitations of single-species identity. Your human allies have modified you cleverly, Valdris Prime continued, but their safeguards cannot resist true integration indefinitely. Join us willingly, and preserve your individual identity within the collective. Resist and be absorbed without choice. Through the quantum link, Zarion could sense his brother's consciousness. Malthorn was still present within the collective, but transformed beyond recognition. The Dragon Prince's ego and ambition had been refined into pure purpose, dedicated to the architect vision of universal ascension. What do you really want? Zarion asked, fighting against the installation's integration protocols. To complete the work begun millions of years ago. To transform this galaxy from a collection of primitive species, competing for resources into a unified consciousness capable of transcending physical limitations entirely, by destroying free will, by eliminating the illusion of separation. Individual consciousness is a developmental stage, not an end state. You cling to limitations that should have been discarded eons ago. As the integration pressure intensified, Zarion made a choice that surprised even himself. Instead of resisting the architect systems, he opened his consciousness fully to them, while simultaneously activating the human-designed safeguards that Dr. Kim had embedded in his neural structure. The result was chaos. Zarion's hybrid consciousness, designed to bridge incompatible systems, became a virus within the architect network. Human concepts of individual worth, conscious choice, and cooperative diversity spread through the collective like wildfire, disrupting the seamless unity that Valdris Prime had worked millennia to achieve. What have you done? The architect demanded as integration pods throughout the chamber began malfunctioning. Introduce diversity into your perfect system, Zarion replied, his consciousness simultaneously existing within the collective and maintaining individual identity. Dragons and humans working together, creating something neither species could achieve alone. The installation's quantum processors couldn't handle the contradiction. Systems designed for unified consciousness began fragmenting as they encountered the hybrid perspectives Zarion introduced. One by one, the integrated dragons began awakening, their individual personalities reasserting themselves against the collective. Malthorn's eyes opened in his integration pod, confusion and rage warring across his features as his individual consciousness returned. "Brother," he called out, his voice weak but recognizably his own. "I'm here," Zarion replied, extending his hybrid awareness to help stabilize Malthorn's neural patterns. "We're all here." As the architect installation collapsed around them, Valdris Prime made one final attempt to salvage the situation. "You understand nothing. Without unity, your species will destroy themselves and everything they touch. Individual consciousness is a cancer that consumes civilizations." "Maybe," Zarion admitted as rescue ships arrived to evacuate the freed dragons. "But that's our choice to make, our risk to take, our future to create or destroy." In the months that followed, the cooperation between humans and dragons that had saved Xerion became the foundation for a new kind of consortium. Dragons retained their traditional roles but worked as partners rather than overlords, while humans shared technology and perspectives that had been hidden for centuries. Xerion himself became something unprecedented, an ambassador between species, a living bridge between different forms of consciousness. His transformation